Welcome everyone to today's webinar. I'll give everybody just a moment to settle in and we'll get started. All right. Okay, I just want to go over something briefly before we begin our webinar today. Just some specifics about the format of this webinar. It is a Zoom meeting, which means that your pictures, or if you're on camera, your name is visible. This webinar is recorded, and we encourage you at the end of the webinar to engage. You can do so by, using the chat option, or if you would like to ask an anonymous question, you can go to the Q&A and ask if you would like. Otherwise, I would like to hand it off to Keisha. Thank you, Keisha.
Hi, everybody. Good afternoon or good morning, depending on where you are. My name is Keisha Campbell. I'm the Executive Director for Enrollment Services and University Registrar at Morgan State University in Baltimore. I want to thank everybody for joining us today. We have been working very diligently at AACRAO to think about how we are ensuring that all of our different types of campuses across the country are really taking advantage of all that AACRAO has to offer. We know that there are so many things that we can bring to our campuses. So one of the things that we really wanted to take a moment and reflect on is really thinking about the participation of HBCUs in AACRAO and the value of that. I know that I go to AACRAO pretty much every year. I'm very active in what we do, and we're often looking for other colleagues from our HBCUs. And so we'd like to see a lot more engagement there. And so what we wanted to do was have an opportunity to talk about where we see that value and share that with you all as our colleagues so that you can share that in your community, in your AACRAO area, in your regional or national participation, so that we can get some more of our HBCU voices here and represented in our space. So again, we want to thank you. We have, if you are not done so, you want to make sure that you're muted. We want to thank you all for being here. I am going to turn this over to our colleague, Dr. Gwendolyn Davis, so that she can tell you a little bit more about our special guest speaker today. Dr. Davis, are you ready? She might need a minute, so.
Okay, yes, I'm ready.
Hi.
I'm here. Hello, everyone.
Hello.
And thank you for your patience. I greatly appreciate it. And actually, I'm going to ask you to give me one more moment because I lost my page. There we go. So what I would like to do, and I'm extremely grateful to be able to introduce to everyone Dr. LeGrand. She is going to, we have been waiting, I have to tell you all this, we have been waiting in anticipation for Dr. LeGrand to speak to us. And we are beyond excited to hear her speak and hear what she has to say and bring to us. And I'm going to do a very quick introduction. So Dr. LeGrand is the 9th president of Prairie View A&M University, which she began that role on June 1st of 2023. She has an extensive career in higher education. So prior to joining Prairie View, she was vice president for strategy, enrollment management, and student success at Virginia Commonwealth University. In addition to that, she's also held multiple roles, including Associate Vice Chancellor for Enrollment Management at Winston-Salem State University. And I don't want to spend too much time speaking about how wonderful she is and all the work that she's done. And I would love to just hand the mic to Dr. LeGrand. And once again, thank you so much for spending part of your day with us.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you, Gwendolyn. Thank you, Portia, Keisha, everyone who has organized this opportunity. So I'm Tamikia LeGrand, as Dr. Davis mentioned, 9th president here at Prairie View. But I think probably the most important connection to you is that for 15, 16 years of my career, I have been a staunch advocate, supporter, and member of AACRAO. I truly can say that throughout my career, AACRAO as an association has supported me, allowed me to grow and to flourish, whether I was at an HBCU, whether I was at a Hispanic serving institution, or whether I was at a predominantly white research one institution, right? So I'll share a little information today about my perspective about the value of HBCUs in American public higher ed. And then we can launch into this discussion about how does AACRAO as an organization make real that commitment to vision and mission about diverse thought and perspective and institutions around the table. Sound like a plan? Okay, so I have a few slides. I wouldn't be an enrollment manager if I didn't. Just to share with folks some perspective, some of it is data. So that folks have a sense about me. I am a chemist by training with a doctorate in higher ed. I am a product of HBCUs. Both my bachelor's and master's are from HBCU Savannah State and North Carolina A&T State University, and my doctorate from Texas Tech. So I bring a unique perspective to this work. And also being president, I will tell you, not many enrollment managers move through the pathway to the presidency. So I'm also open to discussion about that as people are thinking about their futures as well. So let's just start at the beginning. HBCUs, that there is a difference, right? So, HBCUs provide a first-class education, but if I were to give you the unique perspective about HBCUs, our unique niche is that our experience creates a sense of belonging, a sense of confidence, and a sense of optimism about what impact collectivism and pride can have. That is not at the sacrifice of anything else, right? But it is thinking about the fact that the students that are served at HBCUs oftentimes hear so often what they cannot do, what they cannot be. And they have not always seen models of excellence, role models in their sphere. And so HBCUs do that. Now, those that are closely connected to HBCUs know that there is just something about an HBCU, right? There's a festivity that exists around celebrations, football, and homecoming. There's a pride unlike anything else. And just like many of you, no matter where you are, there is nothing like an alum of an institution that really is the personification of the excellence that exists there. So that's what I would share with you about HBCUs broadly. There are over 100 HBCUs. You see some of the logos here on the screen. Of course, Prairie View's is the largest and in the middle because I have to make sure that I rep Prairie View. But you see many institutions. About half of the HBCUs in the nation are public and the other remainder are private. I will just take a quick moment of personal privilege just in case you don't know who Prairie View A&M University is, just to provide you a little bit of information. We are located in Prairie View, Texas. We are 40 miles outside of downtown Houston. So while we are an institution that sits on 1,400 acres in what is considered to be a rural place, we are very close to the city and metropolitan airports. I say that because I'm recruiting also at the same time I'm presenting to you, as we are constantly looking for good talent. But our institution was founded 147 years ago in 1876. The most beautiful thing I think about our campus is our campus was a former plantation. And so think about the fact that our campus was a place where individuals were stripped of rights, endured horrendous torture, and prohibited from learning to read. And now, today, we educate some of the brightest minds in this country. That is the special significance about our institution. We are a public university. We're the oldest public HBCU in the state of Texas. And we're the second oldest public university, second only to Texas A&M University. We're a land grant institution. So we have a farm, 700 acres of our property is a farm, and we specialize in international goat research. We're a research 2 institution, which means we have high research activity. There are only 11 HBCUs in the nation that carry that designation. And effective this fall, we have about 9,500 students, a 5% increase over last year, might I add, that we're very proud of. Over to the right, you just see a few points of pride that I would let you know. In Texas, we're considered to be a best value institution, #1 HBCU best value, and #5 public institution. And just a few things that maybe you did not know about Prairie View. We are the #1 producer of African Americans in architecture, the #3 producer of African Americans in engineering, the #4 producer of African American nurses in the state of Texas, #6 in agriculture, and #15 overall in producing African Americans with baccalaureate degrees. So we're quite proud of the great work that we're doing here at Prairie View, and so many of our HBCU counterparts are also excited about their work. So, let's get down to it. Why do HBCUs even exist? We know that, just like Prairie View, founded in 1876, that was a long time ago. But the truth of the matter is HBCUs were founded to provide access and opportunity during a time in our country's history where African Americans had nowhere else to be educated. So our institutions were created. So I like to say it this way. HBCUs did what the rest of the nation could not do, would not do, refused to do: educate individuals to provide access and opportunities for economic mobility for them. So these institutions were designed to provide a nurturing but a challenging environment. So don't think nurturing means less rigor, right? It is a challenging environment, but it is focused on meeting the educational, cultural, and emotional needs of their students and develop their career readiness skills and leadership capacity. So while we're historically Black institutions, and many of those institutions remain predominantly Black, they have become much more diverse as we really seek to put the student at the center and focus on their needs and organize ourselves as an institution around the student's needs. The next question I think that oftentimes comes up is HBCUs were founded so long ago, and we've come so far as a society. But have we really, is the question. But I think there is still some relevance for HBCUs today, and I think many of my colleagues would agree. If you just look at the screen real quickly, you'll see that HBCUs, the 100 or so that exist, represent just 3% of all higher ed institutions in the nation, right? We know that we have over 3,500 institutions in the nation. And these institutions have been historically underfunded. In fact, APLU, the American Public Land Grant University Association, published a report just a few weeks ago that identified that HBCUs have been historically underfunded about $12 billion. $12 billion. But even in that, these institutions still showcase a commitment to access and opportunity, because while representing only 3% of the institution across this nation, over 10% of all Black students enrolled in higher ed are at HBCUs. These institutions enroll twice as many Pell Grant students, so they focus on students who come from lower income communities. The students are oftentimes coming from under-resourced high schools because they are less than likely to take advanced placement courses, not because of lack of talent and potential, but a lack of access to opportunity. And about 40% of them are the first in their family to attend college. Now, with all of that, and you look at the nation's success rates, how we measure success in higher ed, we do that looking at the percentage of students that finish what they start, graduation rates, right? So the national average for graduation rates is about 61%. That's across all institutions. Your elites, your not so elite, your open access institutions, 61%. And the national average for 6-year graduation rate for African-American students is 42%. Then you look at HBCUs, where I just shared with you the student profile of HBCUs. And we are graduating students at about 38%. And while that means that there is still much more work to do, like rest of the nation, we lose more than we're graduating, but it's not that far from the nation's average of African-American students, right? And if you think about a third, for example, a third of institutions, so about 34% of institutions, their standards for students are much higher. So you would expect those rates to be higher than that overall. And then when you look at the top 20 HBCUs that the nation identifies to be the top 20, their graduation rate is 51%, right? So HBCUs are contributing significantly to this work. But I'll tell you what I think the superpower of HBCUs are. I think it's economic mobility. If you look at the chart that you see there, you'll see McKinsey and Company did a study in 2021 that showed the mobility rate for 50 historically Black colleges and universities compared to other institutions in the nation. And they found that on average, the mobility rate for all institutions was 1.6, and at HBCUs is 3.0, twice as much. And so basically what that means is the Post-it note gives you the summary. HBCU graduates are 51% more likely to move into a higher income quintile than graduates of non-HBCUs. Now, I don't know about you, but when I think about American higher education, that's what we said we were creating it for, right? For individuals to be able to move social mobility, economic mobility, and HBCUs do that regularly. So just a few things about the significant value for HBCUs. This is some data that came out of Gallup and Strata did some work on understanding the experience of HBCUs. This slide just really shows you across a swath of different areas that Black alumni from HBCUs feel more likely than their counterparts that their goals were met at an HBCU, that they learned new things, that they gained the skills that they needed for it to be successful in work, that they learned how to be a good role model, that they're able to support their family and themselves, to be the best person they could be, qualify for good jobs, make money, and advance in my career. Now, when we think about individuals from a holistic perspective, all of these things matter, right? It is not just about the education in the classroom. It is not just about the career, but it is about the ultimate well-being of individuals. The next slide just shows that Black alum often feel that they had better skill development at an HBCU compared to their counterparts at other institutions. And lastly, that Black alumni also feel they report a higher value from professors, mentors, and the classes at HBCUs. Now, I will say they report lesser value from research experiences, but that can be attributed to the fact that there are only 11 HBCUs that are heavy research, right? And so it's not as prevalent as it is at other institutions. But in this, when we think about the work that really happens in the classroom, the work that really happens with engagement at HBCUs, the students report that makes a difference. We know that when we're admitting students and enrolling them, we're basically saying that we believe in their potential. And every day, those students need someone to connect with them to say, I believe in you too. And that happens more frequently at an HBCU than in some other places. If you're still questioning the significant value of HBCUs, I hope this list of facts helps you out a little bit. While only representing 3% of institutions in the nation, HBCUs produce 85% of all Black doctors, 85% of Black judges, 75% of Black PhDs, 75% of Black veterinarians, 50% of Black pharmacists, 50% of Black attorneys, 46% of Black executives, 40% of all Black dentists, 40% of all Black engineers, and 40% of all Black members of Congress. Our span is great, right? So the work is significant to positively impact society. So that's what I would like to offer as far as the value that HBCUs bring to American higher ed, and in turn, bring to AACRAO. If we think about the fact that one of the great things about American higher ed is that we have a diversity of institutions. There's just not just one type. We have community colleges, we have junior colleges, we have different four-year institutions so that people can find their niche. That's one of the things that is so unique about our institution. And we all have our niche and role in society. But when I think about the relationship with HBCUs and leading into our conversation about AACRAO, is why are HBCUs important to AACRAO? I think the answer is in the vision and mission statement of our association, that AACRAO desires to be a leading voice in higher ed. And leading means that we have to think about the people that we are serving in the future. And we are all focused on our students. And our students are diversifying. Our students are changing, which means based upon that mission, that we got to have diverse people that are building community as professionals to lead the way so that our institutions are represented in this organization to make sure that as an association, we are prepared to serve the students of the future. So I'm looking forward to our discussion and conversation. Those are my initial thoughts. I'll turn it back over to my colleagues for discussion.
Thank you. Thank you again, Dr. LeGrand. I greatly appreciate it. This was information that I have not heard before. So I learned some things today. And with that, before we move on to some facilitated questions, I am going to ask our own Roz Perry if she would just speak a few words to us, and then we will go directly into our facilitation of questions.
Sure. Thank you, Dr. Davis. Good morning, everyone. This is just wonderful. And Dr. LeGrand, I must say, my heart right now is so full because this has been a labor of love for Black Caucus. We knew we wanted you to come in and to speak to us about the value of HBCUs within our profession and within the organization. And I'm just so happy that Gwendolyn and Portia remained diligent to get you here to speak with us. I just, on behalf of the AACRAO Board of Directors and serving as the Vice President of Access and Equity, I just want to say thank you so much for taking your time out to talk to us today. You have just entered a sorority, for lack of a better term, with so many awesome African-American women who hold the title of president. Dr. Javon Adams-Gaston at Norfolk State, Dr. Melissa Gilliam, who is set to be the first woman and the first African-American woman to serve as president at Boston University in the near future. And also Dr. Daria Willis, who's the first African-American president at Howard County Community College, and you serving as president at Prairie View. And I just am so overwhelmed. Like I said before, my heart is full. And thank you so much for doing this for us and speaking to us. I appreciate it. I cannot stay the whole time because I am actually in Bloomington, Illinois, representing the board of directors at the Illinois AACRAO state meeting this week. So, but I just wanted to extend my thanks to you, and I hope you all have a great rest of your session today. Thank you all.
Thank you. So good to see you, Roz.
Good to see you.
Thank you, Roz. And I'm gonna Portia.
Yeah, no.
Lead it over to Portia to take over the rest. And thank you once again.
Yes, thank you, Roz. And I do want to send a thank you to Dr. LeGrand. I feel like as a product of an HBCU, my logo was at the bottom of her sheet, and it was small as it should be. I get it. Tennessee State University. You know, we have wonderful alum. Myself, Oprah, just to name a few. But
That's how you put those in the same sentence. But go ahead.
Thank you. And that's what they teach us at HBCUs. We are proud. So I just want to thank you for this. I'm super excited. I would like to start off with our discussion. And our first topic we would like to know is why are HBCUs important to AACRAO? You are more than welcome to unmute, raise your hand. I can call on you. If you don't feel you don't want to talk, we will do Q&A. I will be able to read your answers. Any private questions you want to send me, I can. If you don't want me to say your name, please say so. Other than that, I will put you on a platform that you so deserving should be on. But yeah, go back to the question, why HBCUs are important to AACRAO. We had Dr. LeGrand lay out on her last slideshow some poignant statements in the mission and the vision. So I would like to kind of expound on that.
Portia, I'd like to speak to that if I could. Dr. LeGrand, thank you so much. I've heard you speak before. I heard you speak in Toronto at the SIM conference, and I tell you, you're something to listen to and behold, and makes us all proud. I'm also the beneficiary of HBCUs, Philander Smith College out of Little Rock, Arkansas, and what used to be known as Arkansas A&M and now UAPB. Yes, and I married a wonderful man who graduated from North Carolina A&T. All 9 of his siblings graduated from that college. So I am very much attuned. When I look at AACRAO, I look for gaps in service or gaps in how we're operating. And HBCUs are missing from this equation. We're not serving, we're thinking about it, we're not reaching out, we're not creating a space for HBCUs to see that they fit into this AACRAO space. And this is why this has been so important to Portia and Keisha and Rosalind and Tina and so many, and Kimberly and so many others, that we need to bring you all into the fold. You're there, but we need to bring the rest of you into the fold. There's a place for you in AACRAO. There's a space for you in AACRAO. We just need to make you aware that you're welcome.
So, Cassandra, thank you for your comments. I remember when we had the conversation about this event, right, in the beginning in Toronto, so I'm gonna go back to my own personal experience, moving up the ranks, as an AACRAO member. And, just what I felt like my lived experience was at an HBCU. I think the first thing I would say is, just like many under-resourced institutions, sometimes there are not resources that allow you to travel as much as you need, right, for the professional development. Right? Sometimes in those spaces, institutions have to choose, right, and the same persons get chosen based upon their title. So that's one thing I will say is unique to under-resourced institutions, and HBCUs are one of them. But I think the other part is sometimes people don't realize the great work that they're doing that they need to share, right? People are doing great work in pockets. And sometimes people that are doing good work, their head is down there just doing the work. Somebody needs to tap them on the shoulder and say, hey, Keisha, I heard about this thing that you all are doing. Come present with me at AACRAO. Right? Or be on this panel, right? And so call folks' name. If we really want diverse thought around the table, diversity don't call Tamikia, right? Call my name. Say, we are looking for institutions from these sectors to provide context on how can we improve student belonging, for example. What are things that you are doing? HBCUs, HSIs, right? They have lots to contribute in those spaces. So one is those institutions, those individuals have things they can teach others. And I think it's important to celebrate them in that way. And I didn't present until someone said to me, come sit with me on this panel. And I'm saying, why? Sit on a panel? And when I did, I was like, oh, I know some stuff, right? The other part is we have things to learn, right? And if we really, as an association, are talking about the future, we should create spaces for both of those things, for people to share and for people to learn. And so for them to learn, sometimes you have sessions, I'll say, that I'm gonna use a vendor, for example, that will give a session and people are there and going, I mean, this sounds great, but we could never do that. It doesn't work that way. And so sometimes we might even need to push some of our vendor presentations to have individuals from institutions of varied resources to really put that in context for people, right? So that they can take it home. The last thing I will say is the power of networking. I would not underestimate the power of networking. So I'll give you my own personal example. I was an AVP for enrollment management at Winston-Salem State, doing great work, decided I wanted to push myself and go to another institution to see if I could do it again, because I thought I was a product of circumstance. But in that process, I had become much more involved in AACRAO. All of a sudden, I'm being recruited all over the place from institutions that I would have never dreamed, right? I'm being invited on national stages and platforms. One, because a colleague who does not look like me and was male from AACRAO endorsed me. And whether you like it or not, we all need sponsors. And your next sponsor could possibly be at AACRAO. And so if not for your institution, if not for the students you serve, you owe it to yourself to get involved because you need someone to help you move to the next level.
I want to just piggyback on the networking piece because you nailed it. Just talking about people in other spaces and bringing them into those spaces is a critical piece. But one of the really great things about AACRAO, both at the regional and the national level, right? Because even if you can't go to the national conference, there are regional organizations that you should be a member of, right? And they may be more helpful to you in your area because you're accessible. You can drive to that institution. You could meet up with somebody to talk about something. But most importantly, I think the idea of sharing and community that you get with this group is amazing. You cannot walk into a room and say, oh, I have X problem, or I have this tool, or I'm having a trouble with this. And somebody's not like, here's the code for this. This is what we did. We had that same problem, or I was talking to this guy that had this issue. Everybody is super helpful. And I cannot overstate the amount of helpfulness that you can get just by talking to your colleagues at these conferences or meeting up with them or coming into these types of webinars where you end up connecting with people who have the same tool. In our state, we are one of the few schools that has the SIS that we have. So we're not able to look necessarily to our colleagues here. They would help us if they could, but they don't have the same SIS. They don't have the same problems. They don't have the same challenges that we might be having. And so if I talk to somebody else that's in Pennsylvania or someone in California that has the same thing, we've been able to solve a lot of problems. We've been able to share a lot of information. And when you talk about resources, right? I think a lot of times it's not always that the resources are lacking, is that you're not necessarily using them to capacity. We love on our team, and I want to just give a shout out to so many people from my team that are here. Thank you, friends. I appreciate you. We will duct tape some stuff together, MacGyver style, to make it work. And like, that's our MO. Like, you don't have to help us. We'll figure it out. And if somebody else could use that tool that we bought a $150 license for, we didn't need $10,000 for it. We didn't need $20,000 for it. We needed $150, and somebody who was driven, and I'm going to name her and she's going to be really mad at me, but we're talking about naming people. Maya Macklin, who is our operations manager, has transformed the work in our office by using tools that she has either found or someone else has said, hey, can we do this, and just become driven about it. When you can share that with people and they don't think that there's something that they can do with their limited resources, and you say, look, we did this. It's all about sharing that information. There's enough for everybody to eat. This is not a competition. We are all in this same thing together. And if we're in it for what we say we are, which is to help our students, doesn't matter where they're coming from, then we're going to share those resources and we're going to talk about how we can get to that space. So I really agree with you on the networking piece, but also on that collaboration and that sharing piece. And that's just inviting people into spaces so that they know that they are in fact welcome in that space. So spot on.
I mean, absolutely. That a question came up from that, which they are wanting to understand some more. We've got Rose. She's worked at a community college and oversees university transfer and partnership. And she wanted to know, what are effective strategies and outreach efforts to connect prospective students with HBCUs?
So there are a couple of different ways to do that. And quite frankly, it would be really cool if there was just a consortium to say, here's what it looks like. One thing that I really want people to think about is that in the past few years, specifically in this sort of post Freddie Gray, post, I don't want to call it post because we're still in that world. Our institutions have been called upon and stretched very thin, right? Because the idea is that we're supposed to be answering the call for all of these things. And the reality of it is it's all of our job, right? To answer your question, different schools have different processes, but keep in mind that, there are areas sometimes that schools don't necessarily go to because they don't get a lot of students from there. Helping to educate your students about what HBCUs there are that exist. Think about, maybe look at some of the data from your students. Where are they going? If there are schools that it looks like they're going to, reach out to those schools to make those agreements. Those would be the ones that it makes more sense to do. We get a lot of people wanting to make agreements with us at Morgan from out of state. Think about what that looks like for your student population. Look at your data points and then reach out to those schools. Maybe do some polling with your students to see what areas they might be interested in. I'm not sure, Rose, where you are coming from or what region of the country you're coming from. I know for some of our friends out in the Midwest and in the West, there aren't as many options in terms of HBCUs, and people don't tend to know so much about them. And so, you have partners here now that are willing to put you in connectivity with institutions. So even if this is just something where you reach out and say, hey, this is what we're doing, we'd like to make some partnerships. Can you help us with some of those schools and identify who those are? We're happy to help you with that.
But I would offer a few other things too to Rose, in addition to what Keisha mentioned. I think sometimes students don't necessarily know all that's available to them. And so you might consider, as a part of your college transfer process, that you talk to students about different institution types. And you can invite institutions in, right, to have that conversation about these are different institution types and these are the different characteristics of those institutions. But I'll tell you, I have found more than anything, faculty to faculty relationships between the community college and the four-year institution are life-changing for students, right? Because then they build these relationships in a way that faculty then come into another faculty member's class, right? And they begin to build pathways into the four-year institution major. So it's more than just the transferability of courses. It really is about a relationship. And those kind of things then grow into guaranteed admission and transfer scholarships when you truly have a pipeline going from one department at a community college to another department at a four-year institution. And so I think those would be two things that I would offer.
I'd like to add one more thing too. Even if it's not your 4-year, HBCUs have graduate programs as well. So, they have doctoral programs, they have law schools. It's not just at that level that you should be promoting that information. So as was stated, right? Introduce them to the different types of school. This is no different than saying, do you want to go somewhere rural? Do you want to go somewhere urban? Do you want to go somewhere, it's the same research, right? You're just applying another filter in what you're putting out there. So, don't limit it to just that 4-year experience. Think about the fact that there's so much beyond that. So even if they maybe go in state for their 4-year because it was more affordable to them, they can look at some of those programs out of state and see what's available to them or in their area that are HBCUs that could also offer them what they have. So that's another way that you could potentially expose your students to that early and often. The other thing is we were talking before everybody came on, NACAC was here in Baltimore, and that's the National Association of College Admission Counselors. If you have partnerships with your college admission counselors, you should start to think about that. Talk to them about the HBCUs and introducing that to your students, making sure that they are putting that information out there for students to know that it's available to them. Do they have resources in their college admission counseling office that talks about HBCUs, MSIs, all of the different options? Again, you're just adding another filter to all the things that are already there. So if that's not in that space, that's something that's just like a natural way to make sure that students are learning about this as an option.
Thank you, Keisha and Dr. LeGrand. I want to add also medical school, HBCU medical schools, that's out there as well. So there's plenty of connections that can happen. And I think that's that was a good takeaway from what can HBCUs do for AACRAO. It is important that networking. As we see, we just got a lot of answers, which was great. But I know that there's more to tap into. And it is good to have that connection that, you may not think of it now, but as you're doing your daily job, it could come up and you may want to know. So this is why we network. I kind of want to move on to the next conversation, but that does not mean that we don't have to stop with this current topic. But the other topic is, what do HBCU administrators need from AACRAO to increase staff involvement? I would love to hear everyone and see what you have to say, especially from Keisha's team too.
Well, we do participate. So as much, and we want to have more folks.
Absolutely.
I'm very excited. One of the things I'm super excited about, aside from AACRAO Engage, which of course is launching, and I'm going to make sure we get a plug in for AACRAO Engage. If you've not created your account and joined, please do so, because there's going to be loads of groups and opportunities for people to connect there. But also in terms of, again, your regional organizations like, AACRAO, which is our one here in Maryland, Ms. AACRAO, all of these different groups, make sure that you are connecting with your regional groups. There may be some funding opportunities. There are some scholarship opportunities that you can apply for. We want to bring more people from our institution. I usually come because I'm AACRAO faculty now. Thank you, Rebecca Mathern, for saying that I was good enough to be an AACRAO 201. I was like, I don't think I'm the person. But much like Dr. LeGrand said, I got there and I was like, wait, I might know some stuff. This is great. Like, people have learned from me, right? So sometimes you need that boost. And so I do think that, like, just ensuring that you are, again, aware of what's going on at your regional level, because that may be more accessible, and then start planning well in advance for the national stuff. There are a number of options. There's the Tech and Transfer Conference, which is virtual. That means you don't necessarily have to go somewhere to attend that. That's something you could totally participate in, especially for our community college partners, and being part of that, making sure that you're getting visibility in front of those groups. You have AACRAO SIM. So where are our HBCU participants at AACRAO SIM? How are we making sure that that's of value to them to come to that particular conference? And then, of course, at the national, we'd like to, of course, see more people there. So what is it that, like, needs to happen in order for that to happen? Also, there's virtual options for that still. So there's some streaming things. Like, we just need to figure out. And again, I think we're asking people here to talk about what their perspective is on that, because we don't know the answer to that. Why are we not seeing as much engagement in that space as we'd like to? And I'd love to hear what others have to say there.
One thing that I would add, I too am interested in what others have to offer on this statement, this question. But when I think about what administrators need, I think they need awareness about AACRAO. To be honest, the acronym itself is not as self-explanatory for people to know what AACRAO provides, right? I think if you think about the fact that of all of the sectors within an institution, enrollment management, everything that falls under that portfolio, whether the registrar's office reports to it or not, and academic affairs, are the things that have the executive leadership's attention because they directly tie to budget. Every president, every provost is trying to figure out how to do enrollment management stuff better. So think about, how do you share what AACRAO provides to those leaders who are constantly having this information on their mind to say to, for example, their AVP for enrollment management, like mine, Kim Saunders, who's here, to say, Kim, you need to take your team over there to AACRAO, right? Whether it's regional, how involved are you? So just think about, how do we share that message? Also, how do we offer them the invitation of, we heard that you're doing good work in X space. Encourage your team to come and share that information at our college. Every institution is seeking greater brand awareness. So if you speak to budget, how to improve enrollment, and how to get their name out there, you are likely to get folks' attention.
And I'll say, I think that was part of what drove our conversation, was how aware are our HBCUs of AACRAO, that AACRAO exists and what AACRAO can offer, and what is the benefit. So, and I like what you were saying, because AACRAO needs to drive that benefit conversation of, why is it valuable? Why would AACRAO be valuable to HBCUs? And it was part of our goal to connect with those in executive leadership to say, hey, AACRAO is here. We have a large group of people who can share those conversations, can learn from you all as well. And so that was what drove that. It's like, where are our HBCUs? We need their voices. We need their experience. We need their leadership. We need understanding from our HBCUs to help guide this, which is supposed to be a higher education community association.
share something with you all. I'm at a community college in Maryland, I'm at Anne Arundel Community College, and I'm director of admissions. And we don't have a lot of money, and we have historically not had a lot of money, and we've been underfunded, much like HBCUs. And so when I first had the opportunity to attend AACRAO, it came from the fact that I was sitting on the registrar search committee, and they asked the registrar questions I could not answer. For about 2 or 3 questions I can answer. I've always been at college admissions, University of Maryland, other places. And I went to my supervisor, I said, I've got some holes in my gaps in knowledge, and there are questions that were being asked I couldn't answer. And this man, who did not look like me, did not have my lived experience, decided we only had one person that could go to AACRAO. He would give up going to AACRAO to allow me to go and learn and start presenting. Now, once I had that opportunity, and I was the only person in school pretty much going somewhere, on the enrollment services side, I wrote the VP, him, and the dean a letter. I thanked them for supporting my trip to AACRAO. I shared with them every session I attended. I shared how I was going to use what I learned in my work, and then proceeded to demonstrate it. And that is how I got to go to AACRAO from a community college that has a very small budget.
To your point, thank you for that, Dr. Moore. And thank you for the shout out, Dr. LeGrand. I too agree, funding is huge at HBCUs. Living here, I just thank Prairie View and the leadership for investing in us, because they do allow us to attend these sessions and bring back what we've learned. But I believe funding for a lot of the HBCUs, like Cassandra was saying, it impacts. That's not their priority. I mean, there's so many other things that they're trying to do. So I'm wondering if AACRAO could move to offering scholarships for that population of institutions as well. Thank you.
I know that AACRAO does have scholarships, but maybe are you like just for the HBCU population in addition to the scholarships that they do have? Just so we can make the message clear.
Absolutely. I believe for HBCUs, based on them knowing it's not equal across the board, the scholarships, everybody's eligible to apply for them. So giving HBCUs an opportunity to have a pool of money specifically for their institutions. Thank you.
Thank you. I do want to go to some of the comments in the chat. I do know that Keisha was able to point out a lot of ways that you can get involved, and Heather also put in a lot of writing. You can write for AACRAO. You don't have to be seen as far as I'll present in a session. There's other ways to get what you're doing and what duct tape methods you've used in writing. So these are wonderful suggestions. Thank you, Heather. I do have someone had a question that says, if there are any, is there any data on Black faculty, staff at HBCUs, their professional success or retention rates? It says how to advocate for diverse faculty and staff, research, etc. Because belonging in a community is not just student-centered. Staff, community, faculty, community, we could definitely learn a lot from HBCUs. If anyone has any ideas or topics or comments on that, that would be great.
My comment there is, and my colleagues here will tell you all the time, we are all each other's customers and we're all each other's community. And so that's something that we're constantly pushing. Students are, while they are we wouldn't exist without them, right? Your faculty and your staff, to your point, are critical to everything that you're doing there. So I fully agree. I don't know about the data points specifically, like what specific data points would make a difference in this space. But it could be something that could be looked at about sort of this advocating for diverse faculty, staff, research, etc. But somebody just, Cassandra's point, right, that she just made was something that I think is really critical. Most people think AACRAO is just for registrars, and it's not. They miss out on that admissions part. And so I think part of what we could potentially do is ensure that both our registrar admissions teams, enrollment management teams, and transfer teams, because as Dr. LeGrand said, it doesn't matter which house you're under. You might be under the provost, you might be under the vice president for enrollment management and student success, you might be under student affairs in some case. I mean, there's just, it runs the gamut where people are under. So is there just sort of some internal push to make sure that people know what your professional organizations do? I know for a fact, I did an interim stint for admissions, and the admission director and I are now sort of like, okay, you need to come to AACRAO and you need to come to NACAC because this is important. That relationship is very important. So that may be one of the ways in which you can make sure that that information is sort of spread on your campus, or sharing that with people and your counterparts there, is ensuring that they're clear that there are multiple touch points within the organization that would serve the institution really well. I don't know that really answered your question, Michelle, but I do like what you put there, but I don't know what those data points would be to kind of drive that point home in this particular space. If someone else has a better perspective.
So, I do think there is some national data, Michelle, that exists on, the diversity of faculty at different institutions types and their attrition rate. Every institution is kind of studying their attrition rate. Coupa has that data. Oftentimes the American Association of University Professors, AAUP, also collects that data. So, what's interesting is there are some professors, there's one that comes to the top of my mind. He's at University of Houston, Dave Louie, who studies kind of minority faculty experiences at different institution types. And I think the data that he's publishing more recently is really about the learning experiences of what does a lived experience for a faculty member look like at an institution that is culturally rich, right, in which they identify. What does that community look like, and what can other institutions learn from that? So I think there are some scholars out there who are doing that work that would be helpful to share. I think the other piece that I would say that's the newer phenomenon is with this new push toward kind of social justice and diversity. In some places, like in Texas, DEI is under attack, right? But there are other places where there is no more valuable person than a faculty member of color. And don't be in STEM. Folks can't afford you. So we are fighting at HBCUs and at other institutions, trying to keep our faculty of color in particular disciplines, because they're being recruited away for ridiculous amounts of money, right? And so it's in those moments that the mission, right, has to prevail, because we just don't have infinite pots of money. I say that because I think this is something that we're going to have to grapple with, because unless we continue to produce, our institutions continue to produce more individuals who qualify to be faculty that are diverse, we're going to be constantly battling to recruit the same people over and over again. And so I think this is a place where AACRAO, right, as we talk about the enrollment piece, the connection from undergrad to grad, to help think about the future of higher ed and something that we can contribute. How do we develop pipelines to help support the development of diverse faculty so that we can continue to build that sense of community that needs to be on campuses so that students can see themselves? So that's what came to mind when I thought about that. So there are some researchers out there doing the work, but they're oftentimes presenting to peers in their discipline, not necessarily to our associations. So that might be some people that could be brought to the table as well.
And I'm going to jump in real quick, and I know we are getting close to time, and then I'm going to turn it back over to Keisha. But with those two things, in terms of the data and in terms of demonstrating resilience, I'm going to say AACRAO conferences. We need those sessions being presented to have these discussions. So we have annual conference coming up now. Secession proposals have been submitted there, but every year we have annual conference. Every year we have AACRAO has SEM conference. Every year we have the Tech and Transfer conference. And these are great opportunities to have these specific discussions, and the focus can be placed around HBCUs and what everyone else can learn about the work that's being done at HBCUs. So I guess that's my plug for submit some session proposals so we can have more conversations. And it was also thrown in there, and right for CNU, right for AACRAO Connect. Reach out if you want to do a webinar, seminar, anything to have more of these conversations so that we can recognize the good work that's being done at our HBCUs. And then with that, I'm gonna throw it to Keisha to close us out.
So I wanted to make one quick note, which is that all of my fellow panelists are HBCU alums and I am the one outlier. I want to make it clear that just because you are not an alum does not mean you are not driven in like advancing on us in this space. We have 4 HBCUs here in Maryland. I, of course, work at Morgan State University, go Bears. But I didn't attend an HBCU. What I do get to see with my colleagues, and some have attended, some folks that work on our team have attended. We have an Aggie, Rhonda, have her INT shout out there. But we have some folks that went to Morgan. One of the things I would really like to see people do is get into the space of folks that attended and work at other places are huge advocates. Look at all of these folks that don't work at an HBCU that attended one, or they don't work, they never attended one, but they understand the value of it. Everybody can support in this space. So if you have a way that you can support in this space, whether it's word of mouth, making sure it's shared in the right spaces, that's how we make this stuff happen. So for everybody that came today, we want to say thank you for really taking the time and showing us that there is some interest in this space. And we would really like to keep connected with you all and make sure that you are joining our AACRAO Engage group, following up with us if you're interested in helping us participate. If you are from an HBCU, let's get together to figure out how we can make sure we're helping you be able to get your institution involved in AACRAO, and just make a connection. We do have a group that we're going to create, which is like an HBCU Connect group. It's going to be hosted through Morgan. So if you want to join, that'll allow us to send each other messages as well as the AACRAO Exchange to just kind of help us connect with one another in any way. So we'll definitely pop that on there. But we want to thank you all so much. We have all of your information since you registered, and I'm sure we'll be following up with you all. Thank you, Dr. LeGrand, for coming and speaking and sharing all of that beautiful information about Prairie View A&M and HBCUs across the board. Dr. Wilson's going to be like, where was the Morgan presentation? We'll get you next time, Dr. Wilson. But thank you so much for sharing all of that information. And thank you all for being here and being so engaging. And we're looking forward to more of these conversations. Thank you again. We appreciate you. Have a great afternoon, everyone.
Thank you.